Thank you, everyone, for coming to today's webinar tagged Learning and Development in the Multi-Generational Workplace. And of course, it's an honor to be asked to moderate today's session. I'm going to introduce our speakers shortly. One of our speakers is Mr. Akinleye Akinwumi, who is a learning and development specialist with Tim Hortons, a company in the United Arab Emirates, Dubai. We also have Mr. Ramsey Prince Osevre, who is a practice director and the COO, Chief Operations Officer at Ajumogbia and Okeke. We have one of our speakers as Mr. Shehu Zubaru, a senior manager at the Oman Capital Partners. We have also Mr. Kende Akitobi, who is the Senior Talent Acquisition and Identification Manager at Coca-Cola Hellenic Bottling Company. We also have Mrs. Mobola Onosonya, who is the Talent Manager and Development Lead at NASCON Allied Industries PLC. Before I go ahead to hand over to our speaker to make his presentation, I'll do a little bit of speaking about the company I work for, which is ESQ Trainings Limited. My name is Idowu Akitunde, and I'm a research and development associate. And at ESQ Trainings Limited, we focus primarily on providing knowledge sharing sessions such as this webinar. And we also provide public and in-plant trainings for companies, law firms, tech firms, and for any of our clients that require such training services. Our mission is to expand the frontiers of continuous professional learning with trainings and courses across different areas of practice. And we have tagged this webinar series, the Launch Hour webinar series, as they are slated to hold at 1 p.m. during the lunch break. They hold twice every week, Tuesdays and Thursdays respectively, at 1 p.m. After this presentation session, every of our attendee can actually type in their question, or maybe even while the session is ongoing, you could type in your question in the Q&A tab, or you could use the chat, whichever you prefer, right? And our panelists would attend to them once they're done with their presentation. Today, we'll be considering the benefits and how organizations can provide learning and development opportunities and activities for a mixed generational workforce, as well as how to deal with issues that may arise as a result of such strategies. So at the end of this webinar, our participants should be able to understand, how to design learning and development for an age-diverse workforce. They will be able to understand the benefits and challenges of managing an age-diverse workforce. They will also understand how to manage performance in a multi-generational environment, and also, understand the learning and development models and the growth trajectory for an age-diverse workforce. So without further ado, I'll call on our first speaker, who is Mr. Akinleye Akinwumi, to make his presentation. Thank you very much, sir, for being around
today. Thank you very much. Just been trying to share the screen. Just a moment. I believe the screen is visible now. I don't know if the screen.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'll introduce myself again. My name is Akinwumi Akinleye. I work with a Canadian brand, which is franchised in the United Arab Emirates, Tim Hortons. I'm really honored to be here to speak about managing the performance in a multi-generational group. So apparently, there has been conflict in workforce. There's always going to be a conflict in workforce, but one that is inevitable, one that we cannot ignore, is the multi-generational workforce, because uh, from time to time, there has been different, age group in the workforce now, because of the uh, uh, one thing we should know, that multi-generational workforce is not a trend. It has come to stay. It's not a trend. Yeah, there has been a trend of people coming in. Some trend of people would fail. Some trend of people would. I'm really very sorry, because the environment where I am is a bit noisy. um, so difference between this multi-generational workforce, we have the silent generation, okay, which have different traits. And we have the baby boomers, we have the generation X, we have the millennials, and we have the generation Y. Based on this generational workforce, they have been defined based on their specific characteristics, okay. The only way to resolve this problem in the multi-generational workforce is only based on the person who is managing each of this is who is managing uh, the workforce. The manager in the workforce depends on how he or she manages. So how can we really resolve this multi-generational workforce? Number one, these are the issues that happen. There are communicational issues, which we're going to be discussing further when we are basically explaining effective ways of handling the multi-generational workforce. We have the negative stereotype, which has been affecting a lot of companies nowadays because of uh, ageism, which results into a company culture, which is not really favorable for some company, whereby some companies will tell you they would not employ a certain age group. And then there are varying employee expectations based on, like we said, each workforce, each multi-generational workforce have different expectational needs. Okay, they all have different expectational needs, which we'll be talking about on how to bridge the gap between each and every of this multi-generational workforce. So let's quickly move towards, because I have only 20 minutes. So let's quickly move towards effective management of the multi-generational workforce. There are two types. There are ineffective approach and effective approach. Now, the major thing most people do, whereby they fail at in managing multi-generational workforce, is by enforcing rules on this generation. Now, most especially millennials, they don't like to be commanded. Millennials don't like to be commanded. The best way to handle millennial multi-generational workforce is by explaining the consequences of bridging a rule. Another thing is by assuming. Okay, assumption might you might assume only a certain age gap are fit for a certain job responsibility. With this assumption, people are assuming wrong, and this is what results into the negative stereotype, which I talked about in the earlier slide. An effective way of handling this multi-generational workforce is by effective mentoring and training. Now, mentoring is not just, sitting them down and, talking to them. It's by a consistent follow-up. After mentoring, you have to give a positive feedback and a constructive feedback. Now, giving a constructive feedback is not necessarily about pulling them down, but they will understand that you love them, and with care, you want them to grow with performance. So, and follow up consistently, not assuming they already understood a feedback which has already been given, but also you need to follow up time to time on this feedback. These are effective ways to which we can effectively manage a multi-generational workforce. Now, step-by-step ways of managing this multi-generational workforce. We've spoken about an effective way. Now, these are ways to which we can manage a multi-generational, how we can manage a multi-generational workforce. The first thing is by implementing an open door policy. Now, when people know that if there are things or dissatisfaction or grievances happening in a workforce, and there is an open door policy to which they can come and explain themselves or they can come and express their feelings, yes, this is going to help resolve the problem of multi-generational workforce, whereby they will not feel that a certain age group is being favored because there is an open door policy to be able to express their feeling and their grievances. Now, for an effective manager to be able to manage a multi-generational workforce, there should be a customized solution to problems. Now, you should be able to meet your team in the middle, irrespective of the age. This is where a constructive and an effective coaching comes in, whereby you apply your skills in giving a positive and a constructive feedback and communicating with the team openly. Another thing is we should be open to adapt a rapid change. Now, with the technology age, uh, in the past, I believe with the baby boomers, they don't believe in official um, in sending official messages or official information via WhatsApp and other social media platforms. Nowadays, people create groups to pass information. There are some organizations that don't even have an official emails nowadays. They prefer sending WhatsApp messages, which is far more effective to them. So we need to be ready to adapt to this rapid change that is happening nowadays. As an effective manager, you need to be ready to adapt and absorb whatever changes that has evolved in the environment in order for us to have an effective multi-generational workforce relationship. Establish a clear goal and expectation. Without a clear goal, without a clear expectation, things will be missed along the way. As I said earlier, feedback should be given to anyone, which I already explained. Feedback can either be positive or constructive. Constructive, not to pull down, but to mend a communication, a performance breach or gap, which is happening in the team's performance. Schedule an inclusive social events. Now, everything should not just be about work. There should be team building. Every team has been doing an effective work. They've been working hard. With team building, this will bring about different generations coming together, trying to understand what are the beauty, what are the things this other party likes. Every generation have what they derive joy in. So by sharing information, by organizing events, they blend and they also mingle and talk. And by the time they come back to a workspace, they have a mutual ground in which they can better understand each other and work. Another thing is getting involved. Getting involved in managing activities and daily job. There are different ways to which each generations handle and work on projects. So you need to understand to which each age group or each generational group will tackle different situations and which they will tackle situations on a different way. You need to be able to understand on how you will be able to relate each project to each different groups. And then you need to mix up your approach with communication. Like I said earlier, the advancement of technology had brought about different ways of different communications, which might be strange to some of the generational groups. And until this day, they are still finding it a little bit hard to even apply or use some of these communicational means. For example, the last time I was speaking to one of my boss, and I was suggesting sending a WhatsApp communication, which he totally ignored because he does not believe in an official communication via WhatsApp. So different communicational group communication means for different uh, generational group should also be mixed up so that you can have an effective way of communicating with each generational group in an organization. And also you need to encourage career development. We like it or not, millennials are coming to take over the companies now. So there must be ways of improvement, ways of sending them for trainings in order for them to take over the next line of generation, the business. There must be career growth trainings for them. So these things must be put in consideration if we want to merge the gap between the communication, the generational workforce. Now, these are ways in which we can bridge the gap. Number one, like I mentioned earlier, I keep mentioning feedback, positive feedback. Part of the ways you can enforce a positive feedback is by praising. Now, in positive feedback, we don't praise too much because by the time you praise too much, it becomes like a mocking. But praises must be immediate, it must be effective, and it must be done immediately when the thing is needed. Now, praising people will help the team to repeat the same positive attitude which you're praising them for. And it helps them to understand that they are recognized and they are valuable to an organization. Award is very important to everyone. There is no, I believe nobody can ignore an award. Once a performance of a team is adequate, I think an award is very, very important for recognition. Increased responsibility, most especially for our young age and young generation. We need to take more responsibility and to hold on to more responsibility in an organization. And this is going to help us take charge of the business itself. Promotions is very important. Like I said earlier, multi-generational workforce is here to stay. And we cannot ignore the fact that we need to start sending millennials for training in order for them to take over the company and for them to grow exponentially. I believe I'm able to make justice to performance management in multi-generational workforce. If there are any questions, I would like to take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Takele. That was a very good presentation. Thank you so much for this perspective. Questions? I believe participants can begin to drop their questions either on the chat or using the Q&A tab. So they can be answered on any of those windows, or better still, if you could wait till the end of the webinar. Yes, you have your questions answered. So at this point in time, I'm going to call on the second speaker, Mr. Kende Akintobi, to make his presentation. Thank you very much. Mr. Kende, are you still on the call? Okay. We just responded to me, said we should give him a few minutes. So every of our attendees, please do well to drop your questions. This is a very, very relevant topic to these times. And it's something that I believe every one of us should have one question or the other that would be bothering our hearts. Or now we can, engage learning and development in a multi-generational industry. Yeah, I look forward to the questions everybody will be dropping, and yes, look forward to also learning from the answers our panelists. By the way, you can also watch our past webinars on my ESQ Legal. That's our YouTube page. So we've done quite a number of webinars over the years, and many of them are on our YouTube channel. So if you feel like learning more, or you want to engage yourself in further learning dimensions, I think you'll find the YouTube channel very interesting. So you can do well to engage with our past webinars, and we also have trainings that we do. So you can reach out to us.
Okay, hello and good afternoon. Happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll just be sharing my screen, asked to talk on an interesting topic. Please, maybe I'll just get some comments in terms of individuals to know that they can see my screen. I'm putting my screen on, and then maybe the host can just indicate so that we are sure that people can see and can hear me clearly. Do you have any feedback in that area so that I'm sure that I'm communicating clearly? Maybe just a comment or something, just to be certain that you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, Mr. Kenny, we can hear you clearly.
Okay,
we can see
I'm
your slide.
Okay, so I'm talking with the time we have.
I think you might still need to. The network is a bit bad.
Okay, but can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? I just want to be sure you can hear me. Or maybe I should stop my video, maybe in case. But can you hear me clearly? Okay, I can see. I'm getting feedback that you can hear. Okay, so I'll just go straight into it. Learning and development models, and we'll talk about the growth trajectory. Give me a few seconds. Let me just also be able to share so that I can also put on my my okay, but I'll just go on like this. So learning and development models and the growth trajectory for an age diverse workforce. There are a number of issues, there are a number of topics, a lot of developments are happening. And then as organizations, as individuals, we must understand the current realities. We must understand the future prospects, and then we must understand the key approaches we need to take, the key steps we need to take so that we can achieve desired outcomes. But we need to look at this topic from different parameters. I'm looking at three key areas that are of interest. One, learning and development models. What are the possible models that we can explore? What are the guiding principles governing these models, or how do they apply to us? And then the growth trajectory. Are there possibilities for growth? You know, we generally talk about learning and development. So you learn and you develop, you grow, you move, you transition from one level to the other in an organization or within your personal career. And then an age diverse workforce. So what are the workforce realities? What are the workforce peculiarities? It's important for us to look at these things, and then we'll just have some high level discussions and then bring it down so that we can take it further. Okay, so looking at the workforce dynamics, within the past 2 years, we had major disruptions in terms of the world of work. We had major disruptions in terms of COVID-19 that restructured the way we react to specific issues, the way we respond to certain realities. We had mandatory stay-at-homes in different locations. We had the rush about the vaccination. We had, unfortunately, some people transitioned, passed away. So that redefined work. So we started having flexible working patterns. We started having work from home. We started having phased resumption. And then part of the psychological and occupational impact of COVID was the Great Resignation. Across the world, we had higher numbers of individuals resigning from work to either look for organizations that support some of their life goals or personal objectives, or look for other opportunities to work, particularly remotely. So you have Nigerians on Fiverr, on Upwork, providing services to individuals in the United States, in Europe, in Asia. So people found other ways of working, because usually you run to the office, you drive, you make sure you get there before 8 o'clock, and then by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, you are rushing to get out of traffic and get to your house. In some cases, it takes you 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on what side of the city you are living in, or whether you are living on the outskirts, as the case may be. But when COVID happened, we had the Great Resignation. People started looking at other things. They had a better acquisition of life and other values like family, health, and a number of people took it upon themselves to quit jobs and look for other ways of expressing themselves. So in terms of workforce dynamics, that's a major one. And we have diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion, there's a general call within the global environment, within the global society, for us to have a diverse workforce. So diverse workforce in terms of gender mix. We're having, we just had International Women's Day on the 27th of March, is Mothering Sunday in specific local assemblies. You know, there are general calls for equality. There are general calls for gender diversity in the workplace. There's also the call for inclusion, ensuring that you have a diverse board, for example, ensuring that you have representation of different ethnic groups. You have different mixes of people within a working population so that the company is attractive to all. And then in terms of attractiveness, you also have different generational bands, age bands within the organization. So you have the millennials, you have generation X, Y, Z, you know, and then you have different individuals. So those are some critical elements that no matter what learning and development model you are looking at, you must pay attention to these realities as they may impact your delivery and your implementation of these things. Then there are emerging trends, you know, emerging trends in the workplace, reliance on technology. There's a more digitally aware workplace. Within the COVID period, you had better patronage of digital platforms. a lot of digital learning platforms, a lot of digital recruitment platforms, people reduce personal face-to-face interface. You could see that income of companies such as YouTube, Netflix, Showmax generally had a fair rating within that period because people relied on rather than interface, they relied on digital approaches. And then banks, the financial service sector in Nigeria, for example, and the telecommunications sector had an interesting boost to some of aspects of their revenue in terms of online banking, internet banking, SMS banking. And then we also had across the telecommunication space, data was a major driver of growth. Data, not in terms of information, but data consumption in terms of internet usage went up within that period. So those are realities. People are making more use of digital platforms, and then people are considering these channels as a basis of interaction. A number of people couldn't come to a training event, they couldn't come to a training venue. So they were learning on Instagram, they were learning on YouTube, they were learning on Twitter. In Nigeria, Twitter was a major driver of social awareness. Social media was a major platform by which news was communicated. I understand that for some of our traditional media, in terms of newspapers, they suffered a hit, and people were more reliant on other as against printed media. People are more reliant on digital media to generate news information. Now you have content creators who are leveraging on that. And then you have a lot of trends in the digital space. You could see what happened to Paystack. You could see what's happening with InterSwitch. You could see different solutions where people are leveraging on data or leveraging on digital platforms to drive growth. You could see what's happening with Jumia, with Konga. You can see what's happening, different levels. DSTV transited, and then they also brought in Showmax. Earlier, people were complaining about high subscriptions, and they introduced DSTV Mobile, and now there's Showmax as an alternative. Okay, so cross-generational interaction. Whilst people are looking for a younger workforce, they must also realize the imperatives behind the mix of different generations. So, for example, you rarely see a president that is 25 years old, 28, 29. You don't see. So at leadership levels, you expect a higher age band. You have 10 years, 15 years experience statutorily required for senior level roles. So that interaction should happen. So that interaction requires tolerance, that interaction requires openness of mind, and then cross-fertilization of ideas. And then workforce dynamics, the other thing is culture change. The new generation is there, the old generation is there. Are we reinforcing our culture, or are we changing? So we've had banks that were a bit conservative. We have banks that are a bit conservative that are transiting to a more youthful and diverse organization. You can see Burna Boy signed a deal with, I think it was Standard Chartered Bank. You could see UBA signed up Wizkid as one of the ambassadors. So you see that there's a deliberate attempt to be branded in a particular way. So this is for workforce dynamics. Now we look at the organization, because the workforce exists within the organization. For the organizations, there are different realities that they are dealing with. One of which is macroeconomic realities. Diesel now is over 700 naira. We just escaped from fuel scarcity. In some cases, there are still fuel queues across the metropolis of Lagos and other cities and towns across the country. There's currently the grid failure. The national grid has collapsed, and we understand about 100 kilowatts or thereabouts have not been recovered. So there's generally blackouts across the nation. So people are relying on petrol, people are relying on solar, people are relying on inverters, people are relying on diesel power generators, and incidentally, diesel has witnessed an increment of about 40, 50, 60, 70% increase. So how do the businesses, the big businesses that rely heavily on this alternative source of energy, how do they cope? So those are some of the realities. Now, when we look at the organization, looking at the organization also, we also need to realize in terms of organizations, there's a war for talent. You are operating in a microfinance bank, and then you are fighting with a commercial bank, a national commercial bank, for the same talent. So you run your graduate training program, or you run your management development program, but within the same market space, bigger fish, bigger sharks are in the sea trying to poach the same talent that you are dealing with. And this also has an impact on learning, because learning also has a budget. There's a budget for learning. What level of exposure can we give our employees in terms of learning? You also have to look at it from a financial side. What are the creative dynamics you can do to generate similar learning outcomes without increasing the cost, given the realities? Businesses are shutting down, businesses are facing challenges. What you used to buy, there's inflation rate. A loaf of bread now can get a loaf of bread for 450 naira to 500 naira. A bottle of malt, for example, now is being sold for 250 naira. You know, prices of goods have taken an inflationary trend upwards of between 20 to 30%, depending on what particular good or services you're buying. So there's a war for talent, but there are also macroeconomic realities. It's more difficult for you to make money in the economy as it is. Emerging trends within the organization. There are emerging trends, regulatory related trends. There are emerging trends in terms of where the world is looking at. And then we looked at cost as a driver for budgeting, cost as a driver from how the organization looks at profit. And then there is the culture change or reinforcement. So how is the company able to adapt? The company must have an identity of its own. It must have a culture, a means of expression of its own that will help the company navigate through these circumstances. So companies are getting a bit more agile. They are getting a bit more adaptable. They are getting a bit more open-minded, so that they can react to the realities that they are faced with. And then this is also going to have an impact on learning and development. I'll just run one more slide and then I'll talk generally. Okay, so in terms of learning, learning imperatives that you may want to identify is that there's a functional shift from running training. Training is occasioned from the perception that you are making an intervention in the life of somebody, or you are transferring knowledge from the trainer to the trainee. But learning is a bit more deliberate from the trainee. So we are looking at the trainee, how is his personality. Some people are more word-based. They prefer having a document. But some people are more picture-based. Some people are more audio-visual. You know, so different personality types determine the approach to administer training. So organizations are now looking at even the personality mix to use it to determine learning outcomes. And then when we say learning, a lot of time people have the misconception that is a training event that determines your organizational commitment to employees' development. But beyond that, learning can take the place of several forms. You have mentorship and coaching. You have job shadowing. You know, you have learning on the job. So it's a more conscious. You can stuff plenty of people in a training event, but you cannot force them to learn. So learning must be deliberate. Learning must be intentional. Learning must be a decision made by the recipient or the participant in that process. So a lot of discussions globally have moved from training to learning. So what are the preferable learning styles? What's the psychology of learning? What's the best approach to learning? So you hear things like less content, more impact. So you have short sessions, you have shorter sessions that are more impactful, so that you can retain knowledge and apply them to execution. So a lot of people go through school, but they are not able to retain sufficient knowledge. So a bit more interactive, a bit more user-friendly, a bit more engaging. So you have different learning activities. Apart from sitting in the classroom, you have interactions in terms of technology, in terms of tools, in terms of simulations, in terms with games. And within those exercises, the mind is conditioned in a positive way to receive the learning outcomes and translate them to practical outcomes that are evident. So those are some realities. And then the reality is that we are in a digital stage. So now we may not be able to gather physically in a class. We have to use this platform, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, different platforms that have to facilitate learning. And now you cannot see what exactly the trainees are doing. So you must have a monitoring system. Are we going to do an evaluation after this training? Are we going to mandate that everybody puts on his or her camera? How do we deal with the issue of network challenges in a country dealing with infrastructural gaps? So these are realities. What a lot of companies are doing now is looking at having a hybrid. So they are not moving fully to physical. They are having a hybrid between physical and digital. And then even in terms of physical, there are a lot of challenges. Looking at transport, some companies, they have offices across the country, and you want to run a learning event, you have to travel to Abuja. You want to run a learning event, you have to travel. A commercial flight now is as high as 50,000 for a one-way ticket. So there's a cost. Hotels generally charge between 40 to 80,000, depending on the kind of hotel that you are using. So there's a cost. So can we create a platform that can make us cost effective and achieve the same outcomes? So those are some of the realities. Can we have a company learning platform? And then how do we monitor it? Because when people are not monitored, we cannot guarantee the outcome. So how do we monitor their participation? How do we ensure that they go through it? Someone may just be putting on a video, but he may not be watching it. So those are some concerns that are currently ongoing. And then user friendliness. So how is it friendly? Because we are talking about a multi-generational workforce. It is normal to assume that the older generation may not be so adaptive to modern technology. So how do you marry that in your delivery of a company-wide learning intervention? You must put those things to mind. But are we going to stay in the age of being dinosaurs and not accept change? Are we going to, because you remember in this, maybe 20 years ago, you couldn't make a purchase with an ATM card. Possibly you go to the bank, you'll be having transfers, you go to a bank to physically to transfer. But now, without visiting the bank, you are making transactions on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad. So we must be willing to accept change. And then how do we deal with compliance? How do we deal with resistance? Those are the issues without throwing away the baby and the bathwater. And then in the midst of all of the things, we must also pay attention to the corporate objectives. So I would save the time and now look at other things that we can discuss to achieve the objectives that we want to realize. In this world, as an employee or as a change agent, we must be sensitive to the changing nature of the world that we are living in. We must be sensitive to the population that we are serving. We must be sensitive to the objectives that we want to achieve, and then what approaches do we have? A number of times you have to think out of the box. A number of times you have to be a bit more dynamic. A number of times you have to be a bit flexible. What are the business objectives that we have? We must match our expectations with the realities that we're currently going through. So we must factor in the realities so that you can be a bit more considerate in achieving the outcome. So when you are making an expectation on a multi-generational workforce, you must realize the peculiarities at each age segment. In terms of maturity, you may expect that the more older people are more mature. In terms of adaptability to change, you may expect that the younger ones. But how do you, in terms of managing an entire crop, you can drive data analysis to check behavior, to check user patterns, and then begin to interface with them to achieve those outcomes. But in whatever we are doing, you must not just look at the functional preferences, you must also look at the corporate objectives. So Panadol or an expert surgeon is not useful to a dead man. So you must look at your realities to be timely, to be proactive, and then to be solution oriented. I think that I'll leave time for questions because we have just a short period of time to discuss this, but I'll leave time for questions so that we can take it further from here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you very much for that detailed presentation. And that was very good. So after this last session that is going to be given by Mr. Ramsey Prince or Sarah, we can take questions afterwards. If you don't. Thank you so much. Mr. Ramsey, you have the floor to make your presentation.
Hello. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, clearly.
Fantastic. Yeah, I want to thank you for the opportunity, the organizers for the opportunity to lend my voice to this concept, especially the disruption as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. For example, L&D has always been there, but it brings to focus a lot of things because especially now that we are talking about the age diverse workforce. So I want to thank you again for that opportunity to lend my voice to my colleagues that have actually dealt with this topic in their respective ways. I will be discussing about the learning and development for an age workforce. As a matter of fact, the design, training design for the learning and development, the age diverse workforce. Let me quickly share my screen so that we can, let me just hold on for a minute. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen, please? I just want an affirmation, please.
Yes.
Fantastic. Just hold on a bit.
It's loading again.
You can see it, right?
No, it's loading again.
Oh, okay. Wow. Many difficulties.
Maybe you stop and try resharing.
Okay. Wow.
Sir Ramsey, if you don't mind, you could share it with me as a direct message on the Zoom app, and I'll project for you.
Okay. Let me. 1 second, please.
Have you been able to share? Sir? Hello. Hello, Mr. Ramsey. Hello, Mr. Ramsey. Can you hear me? We're very sorry about this. It happens sometimes. We don't have much control over the network. We change the simple show. Please just hold on a bit. It's while we wait for Mr. Ramsey, uh, Mr. Akileye and Mr. Kende. Is it okay that we take some questions now?
Of course, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
that's fine.
All right, so there's this question here that says that as an L&D professional, what are your key frustrations within and outside the organization as it relates to learning and development or performance management? So anyone can answer it, or you could both give your thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you very much. If I hear the question very well, frustrations in a field of learning and development, right? In and outside the organization, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Especially in terms of either learning and development or performance management.
Yeah, performance management.
Yes.
Okay, I will just speak on two things here. Based on, I work outside the country with multicultural association, a lot of people. The first thing is communication bridge. A lot of nationalities come around here, and most of them are not really English speaking. So the communication gap are one of the major frustrations which we face, which I was still discussing with my HR today. So these are one of the things. And another thing which is very key as a learning and development professional is to understand learning styles. If you don't understand learning styles, one is going to be really frustrated, because as a learning and development professional, we know that there are different learning techniques, which are kinesthetic, auditory, and visual. So adapting this 3 learning styles is very key, not only one of the learning styles, which I believe is one of the major disadvantages of, what's it called? Technological training, such as Zoom and everything, because one will not be able to perform, the kinesthetic part of the training. So, but knowing the 3 learning styles is also one of the ways that which we can use to help improve performance, because understanding the 3 learning styles will help match the performance gap in this. And then follow-ups, which is very important. Thank you. I hope that has answered a bit of the question.
I mean, yes, that was a very phenomenal answer. Thank you very much. Would you like to weigh in, Mr. Kende, on that question?
Okay. Part of the interesting thing is to some of the challenges is, are we more proactive or are we reactive? So in terms of learning and development, in terms of performance management, for performance management more especially. So and then what is our investment in people? So One, are we more proactive or are we more reactive? Then what is the quantum of our investment? Those are two things that could be challenging, because you could look at an expected outcome, but are you ready to make investments in terms of the time, in terms of the resources, in terms of the planning to generate what you desire? So those are two things that can be a bit frustration. Your response and then your level of investment.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that. So another question is that how will the market in which we play? Can we hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I think we lost you a bit. Benga, I don't know, can you hear?
Hello, can we still hear me?
Yes, we lost you, but we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Network issues. Okay, so I was asking that how will the market in which we play right now, how will it change? Looking at the next 5 to 10 years, and what should we be learning to remain relevant or even lead change in a multicultural and multi-generational industry? If anyone can answer.
Okay, I would say that one, whilst it's good for us to be adaptable and proactive and agile, it's also important for you not to lose your sense of identity. So what exactly do you stand for and what do you want to achieve? So your identity remains, but the approach to realize your objectives may change. So first, have your clear vision, have your clear sense of direction. Then the approach is something that we can look at. Now, in terms of the a lot of changes we're having in terms of culture, in terms of the realities, in terms of the environments that are changing. You just need to be a bit more flexible in your approach. So how do you achieve the same objective? Okay, let me give you a brief example. In Nigeria, we had Silverbird cinemas, we have Genesis cinemas, we have a number of cinemas, film house. But you realize that a lot of Nollywood producers are now featuring their works on Netflix and becoming millionaires in dollars by selling their rights to those to that platform because they can reach a bigger audience. So how do you achieve more with less? You know, what you are doing is that the most effective way of doing it. How do you achieve profitability without the rigor of the challenges that you are going through? So some of these things are answered by us being able to get out of the box that we are. Check, you find out that within this time, within the past 3 years, a number of billionaires attained much better wealth because they were leveraging on digital platforms. So you check your top 10 list of billionaires, you see Microsoft, you see Amazon, you are seeing Facebook. So you must be willing to understand where the world is going to. We're talking about robotics, we are talking about cryptocurrency, we are talking about digital solutions, we are talking about metaverse. Those are channels by which the world interacts and communicates, and then you must leverage. There was a time that companies didn't have websites. There was a time that we were going to NIPOST to post letters. But as the world is changing, the technology becomes the platform by which we interact. I remember the Note 9 Note, I remember the phone booths, but technology is the platform by which the world changes. So you must leverage on technology, understand where you are going, and then achieve the outcomes through the approaches that you have. Those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Does Mr. Clay want to add anything?
No, not really. Mr. Kennedy has done a beautiful justice to that. One of the trainings we need to be learning is, nowadays there are agile training, right? Whereby we are learning how to, people are really afraid right now that maybe their jobs are going to be lost due to the new technological advancement of AI, robotics, and all those things, right? So we should only learn on how we can merge our skills together with the new technological advancement by learning what are relevant currently, nowadays, in this current age. So I believe that is one thing we should really focus on. And as Mr. Kennedy said, we should do this, and also we should not lose sight of the focus of where we are really going to while we're doing this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, sir. It seems that we lost our third speaker to some technical issues. So, and it's not been able to resolve that just yet. So I think what we'll probably just be going forward is make available the slides, his presentation slides, for anyone who is interested. You can always have access to it. Just send a mail to us, and we'll definitely get it addressed. So a big thank you to our speakers today. We're really grateful, Mr. Kehinde Akintobi, for making time to be part of us today and for sharing such a depth of insight with us on today's webinar. Thank you, Mr. Akinleya Kiwumi, for that dynamic teaching as well. We are really grateful for your time. And we also want to thank our attendees, for being around today. Thank you so much. I believe you learned a lot. And let's keep the conversation going. And by going to our YouTube page again, you can also rewatch this webinar and learn again, and maybe do some research on how to take this conversation forward. A big thank you to all our sponsors, African Law Practice, Farmsville Solicitors, GLRs and Co., to Ale Ovia and Alex Aditipel, Advocate Law Practice, Ever Law Associates, and Bloomfield Law Practice. Thank you all for making this webinar possible today. Please take note that our next webinar will be on Tuesday by 1 p.m. And do well to join us. Thank you everyone for joining in today. Do have a nice day. Bye-bye.